You know, they kept it to the springs there.
Everybody's on the seat, we need to start, we got a full agenda. Everybody find a seat.
Oh, we helped the learn this time. And the case of souls, right?
Well. All right, so let's call this meeting of the employees around table to order. We are recording. Okay. So 6:01. Kristen, can you call the roll?
Tim Redmond?
Yes, I'm present.
Oh, I was gonna say, I saw him online earlier.
I'm here.
Hold on, correct? There we go. Doug Overton? No, Doug, Tim Brennan?
Here.
Julie Baxter?
Here.
Steve Hinkemeyer?
Here.
Mario Sullivan?
Present online.
Andy Ruffy? Mike Campbell?
You won't be here.
John Mulder?
Present.
Jay Sheehan? Okay. On Vandenbrink?
I'm here online. Good evening, everyone.
Kyle, Casey Green? Rebecca Breesmore? Here. Hallie Scritchfield? Reese Melton?
Yes, I'm here. Sorry,
Oh.
it's Callie.
Gotcha, Callie. Will Myers?
Present.
Kent Beatrice?
Here.
Frank Alphone?
Here.
Jackie Brown?
Here.
Doug Munger?
Here.
Jeff Comstock?
Yes.
Doug Davis?
Present.
Charles Whitman?
Yeah, present.
Okay, good.
Yes, I'm here.
Gotcha. Chris Collins?
Present online.
Jennifer Holloway? Travis Day? Bill Badaracca?
Here.
Vince Wilczek? T-Rex Dickinson? Patrick Amon Oakham? And Jonathan Bowler?
Here.
Mike Camlin?
Yeah, Mike's not gonna be able to make it.
Okay. Like you have 22 out, I mean 16.
Okay. So we have a quorum. I'll take a minute while we're introducing that, Tim Redmond from is the new Round County appointment, replacing Sonia Macy. Sonia was with us for a couple of years, and this will be Tim's first meeting representing Round County. We do have a letter of appointment from him, so thanks, Tim, and thanks Sonia for her efforts over the last several years.
Yes, I will pass that along and glad to be a part of this roundtable.
Okay, thanks, Tim. Glad to have you. Review and approve the meeting agenda. So, with Mike Camlin being gone, we'll probably strike item number 8. Mike had 5 minutes to talk about CWCB things. So we have quite a few CWCB folks, including Jeff Rodriguez giving updates. So if there's anything that you would have asked Mike, we might be able to ask Jeff or one of the other speakers. So next on the agenda is to review and approve the November 12th, 2026 minutes. Has everybody had a chance to look at those?
Brenner moves to approve.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Cal Prono, second.
Okay. I looked through them, they look good to me, so, I have a motion in a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of accepting the minutes, as written for the November 12th, 2026, 2025 minutes, sorry, that typo's mine. Please say aye.
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 Okay, opposed, nay? Okay, Kristen's unanimous. Did you pull up, Sally, did you pull up the, headwaters of the Colorado, the little summary that I put together? So at our last meeting, we did not vote on whether we were going to submit a letter for the headwaters of the Colorado NIFWIP project funding. And we asked for some more information for that project. And if once that review was done, people could email whether they supported that or not. To make it a little bit bigger. I'm gonna have to start sitting in front of the screen, I think. Anyway, that the emails were due back on like the 24th of November, right before Thanksgiving. I provided the document out to people. There weren't any suggestions for language changes. And we had those members that you see there all voted for or all supported sending a letter of support for that project. So I wrote the letter and we sent it. And I talked to Jeff Rodriguez about how to do that. And his suggestion is if we do something by email, we bring it before at the next meeting and then we ratify it. So what I'd asked would be a ratification of the support for the headwaters of the Colorado. In the packet and online, the letter that I wrote, is about a page and a half to support the project is listed if anybody wants to see it. But I would take a motion to ratify the
I'll make the motion to ratify the letter of support sent for the headwaters of Colorado Elkhead Creek Water Resilience Project.
okay, thanks, Andy. So I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, thanks, Ken.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to thank everybody for your support on this matter and I will not be voting on this. Aaron, we should probably introduce Matt real quick. If you haven't already met Matt, it's our coordinator and the one who was able to identify this opportunity.
Yeah, thank you, Ken. My name is Matt Smith, Watershed Coordinator. I had a big hand in writing that proposal, and I'd like to extend gratitude from our group that you guys supported that. I'm happy to answer any further questions if there's any still lingering in anyone's minds, but yeah, just really appreciate the support. I think it helps get a really compelling proposal for Nipwood. So thank you, everyone.
Okay, so I have a motion in a second. Any further discussion before we vote to ratify the results, which were 19 members of the Basin Roundtable supported the letter. So hearing no more comments, all in favor of ratifying the sending of the email support to send the letter to Headwaters of Colorado, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, opposed? Nay? Okay, thank you. Well, all right. So public comment for items not on the agenda, 3 minutes per individual, 5 minutes per group. Do we have any requests for comment online? No, Andy?
I just have an announcement to make for, not next week, not bringing up a Water Conserving District Board meeting, but the following one in March. We will have, Becky Mitchell in attendance as well as the leadership group, in the Colorado River District. So if anybody wants to visit us, it'll be front loaded at the very beginning of my meeting, so you don't have to sit through my budget discussions and everything else. To hear what they have to say, that should be a fairly current events loaded, presentation by both, and that date is March 18th.
Is that new or one?
Noon.
Where's that at in?
It'll be at our offices at the Mountain Valley Bank Building in Ace Hardware parking lot, just across the parking lot there in Steamboat Springs. And you can attend online. If you just want to listen in, we'll have the Zoom open for everybody.
Perfect, that's gonna be my question.
Yeah,
So
be there
to
first.
the Zoom,
Yes,
okay,
yeah, and if you go to our website, we post those. That won't come out until our board meeting next week. So after that one, the agenda will be set.
okay.
So there you go. Want to hear from some folks who know some things?
Randy, who's coming in, Becky and
Becky, and right now Andy Mueller, Peter Fleming, and potentially Raquel Linker as well.
I'll put it on the website under events.
Okay. Any other requests for comment online or in the room? Okay, well, hearing none. So presentations, Emily, are you on?
Hi, yes, I'm here.
Okay. You've got the floor.
All right, sounds good. I was gonna see if Kat is online.
Doesn't
Doesn't
look
look
like
like it.
it.
Okay. Okay. No worries. I will just share my screen.
We have it on screen already.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Yeah, if you, I can just let you know when to go to the next slide then. Okay, perfect. All right. Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me at the Yampa White Green Basin Roundtable. My name is Emily Adrid, and I am the Water Planning and Climate Impact Specialist at CWCB. And I'll be presenting some updates to the water plan scenarios. This presentation is meant to provide a general update on the changes to future water plan scenarios. I'll be covering the climate aspects throughout the presentation, but it is also a more general update of things that we've been working on as we start the technical update. And so we think that this is timely information to share with the Basin Roundtables because we think it'll be helpful to have the new scenarios in the back of your minds when you go into your no and low regrets discussions and talk about those strategies. So I think the presentation starts with some planning terms that we wanted to provide and just share, I guess, share the terms that we use throughout the technical update process. And these are also terms that I'll be using throughout this presentation. So we thought it would be helpful to start here since there are new faces at the Basin Roundtables. So we just wanted to make sure everybody's on the right starting line, I guess. So to start, we have scenario planning, which is a way to plan for uncertainty by using multiple plausible futures and testing how different assumptions about climate change, population, and water use could affect Colorado's water system, rather than planning for a single predicted outcome. And scenario planning is also a strategy that recognizes that there isn't a super clear path from point A to point B in the future. Then no and low regrets are actions or strategies that perform well under a range of plausible future scenarios. Planning horizon is the future time frame used in planning analyses, often several decades into the future. Drivers are key forces that shape future water conditions, and drivers can include climate, population growth, land use, policy, and economic change, and others. And then finally, a vignette is a qualitative snapshot of plausible future conditions that are possible, but are less likely to occur. And vignettes in our case will be used to explore like extreme conditions, extreme climate and hydrologic conditions without overrepresenting the influence of these lower probability events. So I'll be coming back to these definitions as we go through this presentation, but just wanted to help set the stage. So you can go to the next slide. All right, so let's start with some background. Our current water plan scenarios were originally produced by the IBCC in the 2012-2013 timeframe and were first incorporated into the 2015 water plan. They were then modeled with climate inputs for the 2023 plan. And we've been working with our existing scenarios for a while, and other than adding in the climate inputs for this last water plan, they haven't been significantly adjusted since the 2015 water plan. And we think that it's time to maybe shift some of our thinking and adjust. So CWCB staff have been gathering feedback about the water plan scenarios from the IBCC, the Basin Roundtables, the CWCB board, and our other partners since the updated water plan came out in 2023. And last year we worked with Brown and Caldwell, and they produced a literature review that analyzed how scenario planning has evolved in the water community. And we concluded that there's sufficient evidence to make some adjustments with our scenarios, including adjusting our planning horizon, simplifying our scenarios, and better reflecting what the major drivers are that drive the supply and demand gap. So the changes that I'll cover in this presentation are, again, a direct result of specific feedback that we've continued to receive. And just as a reminder, the CWCB staff have been working on this for a while with our consultant teams, and it is pretty technical work. We presented this information to the IBCC in June, so this information has been out there for a little while. And this presentation is meant to inform Basin Roundtables on our progress and, again, support your no and low regrets conversations. So you can go to the next slide. All right. On this slide, we have the current 5 scenarios that are included in the 2023 water plan. Each of these scenarios provides a range of possible futures along with their modeled supply and demand gap for the year 2050. And you can see, or this graphic and more information about it can be found in the water plan, but I'd like to point out the differences in how future changes to temperature and precipitation are incorporated into each scenario. So first we have business as usual and weak economy on the left-hand side, which indicate no change in average temperature or precipitation in the year 2050 relative to baseline conditions. Then we have cooperative growth in the middle, which does include changes in average temperature and precipitation. It includes a 3.8 degree Fahrenheit increase in average temperatures and a 5% annual increase in precipitation. And then adaptive innovation and hot growth include a 4.2 degree Fahrenheit increase in average temperatures in 2050 and a decrease in annual precipitation by 1%. And all of these numbers are statewide averages. And so we have received continuous feedback that future changes in temperature and precipitation should be included in each scenario. And we agree with that. And that is a change that we are making for our new scenarios. So you can go to the next slide. All right, drivers. So again, drivers are key forces that shape future water conditions. Another piece of feedback that we received was that we should better parse out which factors actually drive the models, and which factors are really more solutions to reduce the gap numbers. So, for example, agriculture demands and municipal and industrial demands are highly dependent on other drivers like climate and population growth. And those demands are more a result of the modeling rather than acting as independent variables. So we are proposing to better identify the core drivers that have the highest impact on the supply and demand gap numbers. And as we've reassessed our scenarios, we found that climate and population growth really make the biggest difference and ultimately are the 2 factors that drive the models that produce our supply and demand gap numbers. The other items will still influence the scenarios, but again, climate and population growth have the highest impact. You can go to the next slide. All right, planning horizons. So a planning horizon is a future time frame used in planning analyses, often several decades into the future. this slide indicates our thinking around extending our planning horizons. The water plan's current planning horizon is the year 2050. However, when the next water plan comes out in 2033, we think it makes sense to extend the time horizon out to 2070, since the purpose of these scenarios is for long-term planning, decades into the future. And I think it's important to note here that our models that will produce data for the year 2070, the models are not the outcome. Our scenarios will give us an idea of what kinds of conditions we should plan and adapt for, but the models are not necessarily crystal balls that will tell us exactly what our future will look like, but the scenarios will give us an idea of what kinds of conditions we should be planning for. So next slide, please. All right. This is a sketch of what our new scenarios might look like. We've gone from 5 scenarios to 3 in order to address feedback we received about simplifying the scenarios. The 3 we've described here are lower water stress, medium water stress, and high water stress. In the lower water stress scenario, we have temperatures that are warmer than temperatures today, with wetter conditions than we experience today. We also have a lower rate of population growth than the growth rate we experience today. In the medium water stress scenario, we have a climate that is in between the warm and wet and hot and dry. Average temperatures are higher, but average precipitation is lower than in the previous scenario. And additionally, the rate of population growth doesn't dramatically increase or decrease from the growth rate we experience today. And then finally, we have the higher water stress scenario. This scenario will include the highest average temperature change and the greatest decrease in average precipitation. And this scenario will also include a high population growth rate. So each of these scenarios will be modeled and will result in their own supply and demand gap. And we're thinking about adding this municipal and agricultural conservation strategies, that's kind of at the bottom here, as almost like a filter that we can apply to the supply and demand gap in order to demonstrate how conservation efforts can help reduce the gap for each scenario. And in our current scenarios, conservation is baked into the total supply and demand gap, which makes it tougher to evaluate the direct benefit of doing more conservation. So now that we're pulling conservation out, we can more clearly see how those strategies help ultimately reduce demands and lower the gap. So next slide. Yes, so this just recaps what I was just explaining. Everything that is new and updated is, again, a direct result of feedback that we've received. So there will be 3 scenarios instead of 5. Each scenario will include future changes to temperature and precipitation. We've identified our core drivers as climate and population growth, and then conservation is used as a strategy to reduce the total gap. So next slide, please. All right, so in this slide, we have the cone of uncertainty with our high, medium, and low scenarios, which reside kind of inside the cone here. And then we have this gray dashed line, which represents the realm outside of our scenarios that is still within the range of possibilities. Our high, medium, and low scenarios are chosen to support statewide and local planning. And we want these core scenarios to guide Colorado on a macro level and motivate the water community toward action. And so we're proposing these vignettes in the realm of possibilities. Vignettes in this case will be a qualitative snapshot of plausible future conditions that are still possible but are less likely to occur. Vignettes can be used to explore extreme climate or hydrologic conditions without overrepresenting the influence of these lower probability events. So I think it's helpful to think about vignettes as something akin to a 1,000-year flood. We don't build our roads and bridges for the 1,000-year flood right now, but it's important to understand the range of possibilities as our climate becomes less predictable and natural disasters are increasing in frequency and severity. There is a potential that our future could get really hot and really dry. But trying to model that gap number is not necessarily helpful to planning because it could look very dire. And we do need to recognize that this is a possibility, though, which is why we're including them as vignettes in a narrative form only. And so they could focus on extremes that could include but are not limited to very high average temperatures, compounding climate events, very low population growth rates, and more. So next slide, please. Okay, so this is just recap of some of the changes to our scenarios. In our future water plan, we'll have 3 scenarios plus the conservation overlay. All scenarios will include future changes in temperature and precipitation. We'll be extending our planning horizon from 2050 to 2070, and then we'll be including those narrative-based vignettes. Next slide. And that's all that we have for you today. Okay, Kat is here now, so I think both of us are open to answering any questions that you all have.
But you have any? Oh, sorry, Andy. Yes.
Yeah, it's Andy Rossi. I just have a question back to the choices around the 3 scenarios. I understand you not wanting to push the envelope to cause undue concern for the extreme end of what would be a very unfortunate future. However, it strikes me that somewhere in the middle there between, say, the medium, and sort of high, maybe a most likely scenario for most of the West Slope where you have medium population growth, yet hot, dry climate scenario. Any thoughts about including that or say specific basins? Because I think you break this up by basin, that their demographic outlook may look, not as extreme in the population growth future.
I can try to take a stab at responding to that. I think scenario planning is, just to start off with, just something that is can be like a little bit difficult to explain because there are so many. We're planning for a range of plausible futures, not for the most probabilistic future. So that's just kind of 2 different ways of going about planning, right? I think that we use SDO data and projections. So we will use SDO projections that go out to 2070, and those may vary county by county. Those are county based. So while we're planning with scenarios, those county based projections will kind of give us that'll be the starting point for those ranges. So I think that the scenario you're describing will be encompassed within our planning, but may not be explicitly called out across those 3 scenarios.
Great, thank you.
Ken, thank you. Yeah, this is Ken Brenner. Emily, thanks for your presentation. I would like to build on what Andy was saying. The state of Colorado is quite diverse and is probably worth considering scenarios that are for very specific areas, because you have the Eastern Plains, you have the metropolitan corridor along the Front Range, you have the mountains in the west that are all significantly different from each other, and the scenario that's appropriate may differ between those various regions in the state. And I would just wonder if you contemplated that maybe that your scenarios might be tied more geographically to the state and less to just a generalized condition throughout the entire state.
Yeah, thank you, Ken, for the question. Yeah, again, the SEO projections, they're at a county by county basis. So really, I think that it's not kind of a blanket statement on growth. It's sort of a starting point for our projections forward. And we just don't know what the future will hold. So the idea that we could know based on region by region and offer specific scenarios for each region is I don't know. It would be a little bit tough, and definitely would expand the scope of how we plan to offer scenarios specific to each region or each basin. That's why we offer this in the tech update, and then at the basin implementation plan level, there's always the opportunity to tailor it further. So I would that's kind of my approach there, but I'm happy to talk more about it with you.
I'll see you at Water Congress.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah, this is Andy Rossi. I have one more technical question about the state water plan update. Will you all be relying on state mod as the sort of water use model to inform some of the analysis and update to the state water plan?
That's the plan. We're in the process of making some updates to state mod. And that's kind of under a separate contract, but that is the plan.
Okay, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but part of the mission of the Basin Roundtables is to keep their state model up to date, or to engage in updates when they're needed for the state water plan. Will you all be looking for the roundtables to form a work group to help with that for our own basin, so you can collect information that needs to be included as updates to state mod?
Yeah, I think that there's kind of two arms of what will be happening there. So we have a contract right now to update just across the CDSS modeling platform. And that includes some specific outreach to basins that really are in need of updates. There will also be work done through the technical update, where we'll be reaching out to a technical advisory group on several different technical advisory groups on different specific issues. So I think you're going to get outreach from our contractors in a couple different venues, but I think that the contract is just getting rolling on the updates to state mod. So I will probably have to circle back on exactly when that would come your way.
Great, thank you very much.
Will? Yeah, this is Will Myers. I have a question in regard to the municipal and ag conservation strategies that you're kind of taking out of the baked in version and bringing them out to where they kind of stand alone a little bit. Could you give some examples of maybe what you're looking at and why it's advantageous to break those out instead of just having them generically in there?
Yeah, well, we're looking at a range of different conservation and efficiency strategies. And I don't know that we have all of the specifics of what those strategies are perfectly outlined yet, but the reason that we've pulled them out is because we had feedback that it was really difficult to understand how we could work proactively towards, reducing the gap if we built in the conservation in the scenarios, which I think is a pretty fair point. What we're hoping to do is, look at a range of different conservation and efficiency tools. So, while it shows one kind of overlay across all three scenarios, I think within that there may be different ranges so that we can understand like what portfolio of conservation strategies could be applied across all different scenarios and how much it could reduce the gap. The specifics of those, we haven't really fully identified each scenario or each portfolio item, but we'd be happy to take feedback on that. And I just wanted to add, since I was late to jump on and you guys got rolling, I just wanted to put out the timeline for the updates across the whole state water planning process. We are contracting right now for the tech update that will be underway until 2029. So that's just starting now. The basin implementation plans will follow shortly after that and go through 2032. And the next water plan will be released in 2033. So this is definitely a ways out, and there's a lot of details still to be determined, but the purpose of sharing the scenarios tonight is to help inform the no and low regrets conversations and just give you a sense of where we're thinking of going. Like I said, we're at very early stages in this, in the development of these scenarios, but wanted to give you guys a forecast for what we're thinking.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. Thank you, Emily. Thanks, Kat, for
Thank
the
you.
update. So in my haste to get to that presentation, I completely stepped over item number 7, which is the budget report from Jeff Rodriguez. Jeff, are you still on?
Oh yeah, can't get rid of me that easy.
I tried.
Yeah, skipping over me doesn't do it. I was prepared to stay till the very last hour. I'll be here all night, as you all know. But I just have a few quick updates for you all. These are kind of more general CWCB updates. Just wanted to start with a friendly reminder as we begin this year's legislative session that roundtables shouldn't take official positions on proposed legislation or bills. However, the roundtable is a really great place to discuss the potential impacts of those proposed legislation and bills. And our desire is to have that continue and for the roundtable to continue to serve as a forum for robust discussion. So I know a lot of you in your day jobs, track the legislative session pretty closely or get updates from the weekly River District updates too. So I encourage you to bring that information to the roundtable and have those robust discussions, because I think the roundtable is a great place for that. I also just wanted to mention that the water supply planning section is developing recommendations to update the water efficiency plan guidelines, which were last amended in May of 2016. To gather stakeholder feedback on modernizing the language for improved clarity and resilience in the development and implementation of the water efficiency plans. CWCB staff is in the process of hosting 2 virtual workshops. The first one was in December of 25, so just last month. But it provided really valuable insights from nearly 20 water providers and staff and consultants. Those folks are scheduled to participate in the second workshop in February. If you have questions about this or, any questions, you can reach out to Jenna Batson, who's leading this effort, as well as the next effort I'm going to mention here. They're sort of in tandem, but a little bit different. This is a really early and friendly reminder that covered entities, so those entities who provide 2,000 acre feet or more of retail water annually are required to report on water use and efficiency through the 1051 portal by June 30th. Really just wanted to mention that because we are working with the consulting team to enhance outreach to covered entities ahead of that June 30th deadline, to really with an eye to improve future 1051 reporting and then identify and address previous data submissions, just to increase the accuracy of the data. So I just wanted to get ahead of that to let you know that CWCB staff or our consultant team may be reaching out to you ahead of that deadline. So if you do have any questions about that, or you're responsible for your organization's 1051 reporting, you can certainly reach out to Jenna Batson ahead of time. I also wanted to mention the Diane Hoppy Scholarship Program. So that is a scholarship that is available for 1 year of scholarship for a Colorado high school senior or a Colorado college freshman interested in Western water issues, planning to or attending a public college or university in Colorado. So if you all know of folks in college or about to attend college, share this opportunity with them. There might be some money in it for them. I don't know if I said this already, but the application is open now. The deadline is February 27th. So over the past couple of years, I've mentioned this a couple times. We're trying to just broaden the outreach for this. So just wanted to make a plug for that as the application period is open. And then lastly, many of you know this already, but I just wanted to give you a heads up that I have moved into a new role in the water supply planning section. I'll be turning my focus towards the water plan update. So working on the analysis and technical update, and then ultimately the basin implementation plans, working with the technical advisory groups. I'll still be really involved with the basin roundtables and the IBCC. You just might see a little bit less of me. So just wanted to give you a heads up there. I'll probably be taking whoever gets hired for that position around to introduce them to you all, sort of a farewell tour, but it won't be farewell. I'll just be around a little bit less. Yeah, we're in the process of hiring for that position. The application period closed on January 9th, so I think that was last week. Things are starting to go by really fast. So, but yeah, just wanted to give you a heads up on that. And then lastly, just wanted to plug the technical assistant for federal cost share program. This is a program that's CWCB authorized about $500,000 back in July. So, well, starting this fiscal year, we've spent about half of that already. So the team just asked me to make a plug for that. We accept applications on a rolling basis. As a reminder, that program is for folks working on creating a federal grant application. So if you have a project in mind or you're thinking about pursuing federal funding, there's some money out there to help you do that. I think that's all I've got. Certainly take questions if there are any.
Any questions for Jeff in the room? Any questions for Jeff online?
Jeff, do you want to say anything? It's Ken Brenner. Want to say anything about the no and low regrets process and how that's going to work with the state water plan, the update that you're kind of captaining?
Yeah, I mean, I can talk about that a little bit. I did sit in on the Big River Committee. I think you all have a really good start on, what on information for Ken and Jonathan to bring to the IBCC meeting in February. Mini roundtables are sort of just starting the process. So I think the February meeting's really shaping up to be a good one. As you all might be aware, we're undertaking this no and low regrets effort as sort of like I don't know, sort of like a scoping process for the water plan, but hoping that those no and low regrets could potentially be incorporated into the water plan and the basin implementation plans. That's kind of why we're starting now, and why the schedule is so compact, is to get all that information in before we really dive into the basin implementation plans. Was there something in specific you wanted me to reference, or did I capture what you were thinking, Ken?
Well, it's a little bit different this time in that we have specific topics that we've synthesized that we're using for this whole process, and that is a unique thing, and how you plan to utilize that in your preparation for the plan. I guess I heard you say it's sort of like a scoping.
Yeah, I think it is a little bit different this time, because when we did the first no and low regrets, we didn't have a statewide water plan. That effort was undertaken before that executive order from Governor Hickenlooper. So, and a lot of that effort sort of got co-opted and incorporated into the first water plan. So as we were working on the 2023 water plan, we revisited the no and low regret strategy to see how it kind of fit with this new imaginative water plan, and it didn't really fit because a lot of things had shifted since 2013, and a lot of what was kind of incorporated in the no and low regret strategy in 2013 was already incorporated into the water plan because it got kind of swept up into the first water plan. So the IBCC was really chomping at the bit to do something, and we thought it was really time to revisit the no and low regrets plan. IBCC sort of took that and ran with it, created a subcommittee, revisited the 2013 document, and really decided, it is time to update this. And so I think what we're thinking is this can really provide a lot of really good information for the basin implementation plans and the water plan. Whether how that gets incorporated, I think still remains to be seen. Whether that is, food for thought for agency actions, or, how do we incorporate that into partner actions or something like that. I think it kind of depends on what we get. We're sort of, as Kat says, building the plane while we're flying it. So we don't really know what this work what the outcome is going to be. But I think, our strategy is to kind of give you all the reins, and help us, figure out what these statewide no and low regret strategies can be. And by starting at the basin roundtable level, it really is sort of a bottom up approach and a grassroots effort. And so I think you all are doing a great job, and, trying to figure it out as we go is always a challenge. It's a little bit messy. So I think, as we go through this first topic, we'll probably iterate a little bit, as Ken mentioned earlier in the subcommittee meeting, and then, refine the process and things like that. So more to come on that, but I really like the direction it's heading. It's people are really excited across the state about taking on this effort, with a healthy level of skepticism about, how do we do this? but I think, you all are the experts in your basin. We sort of operate at this like 30,000 foot view statewide. And so we're really relying on you all to kind of come up with these ideas that work in your basin and feed those up to the IBCC and really allow the IBCC members to wrestle with that and, push and pull against each other in the basin and come up with statewide strategies that we can all agree on that'll work across any of the scenarios that Emily and Kat talked about earlier. I think that's my take on it. We sat down with Sean Cronin, the chair of the IBCC No and Low Regrets subcommittee, and did a podcast on our Water Talks podcast, which is available now. I can drop a link in the chat here when I'm done, but just kind of going over like what this effort is, how it came about, and kind of reiterating some of the things that I just said too. So, as you're driving home to wherever you're going, whether it's Steamboat or Meeker or, just down the road in Craig, wherever it is, you could listen to that and get more information.
Thanks, Jeff. Hey, Jeff, you've been kind of managing the BIT project database. Is that something that you're gonna continue to keep in your purview, or will you hand that off to whoever gets hired?
No, that's a great question, Steve. I will probably continue to manage that. I think what that looks like remains to be seen. But as it's really part of the BIP effort. So I imagine that will fall to me too. I'm also not sure that I'm going to let go of it quite yet either. So I think it'll still be me, but I work for Kat. So if she has other ideas, that it could be a tandem effort too. But I think because it's mostly part of the BIP effort, it'll probably still be some of my duty.
Hey, Kat, you came online. Do you want to weigh in?
I just was going to say that Jeff is all right. He's probably going to continue to manage the project's database because he knows how to do it, and it's can be a heavy lift at times. So maybe eventually you'll get to hand it off, Jeff, but not yet.
Yeah, I have lots of ideas. I've been talking to, you, Steve, obviously, we've talked quite a bit about it and, how to make it more usable for the basin roundtables, but still, allowing CWCB to get what we need out of it. We've been having lots of conversations internally. It's kind of stalled out because we were waiting for the contractor for the tech update and the BIPs, but now that we're contracting with them, I think we can move some of those discussions forward. So that being said, I will probably circle back with you all either at a meeting or maybe one-on-one with the chairs and just to get some feedback on the way we're thinking about, updating that list and things like that.
Oh, yeah. Hey, Jeff, can you give us an update on where Kelsey's at with the interviews of the chairs and some of the other Basin Roundtable members?
Yeah, I actually have no idea. Those are all supposed to be anonymous. I know she has talked to a lot of the chairs already. I think there are a few she's still trying to get a hold of. She's talked to some other folks as well in terms of like some of the brain trust that created 1177 that I know of. So that work is ongoing. I think she's starting to generate a list of, roundtable members as well from some of her conversations with the chairs. So it's moving forward. So far, it sounds like she's got a lot of information, none of which I know, what it is or who it came from. But really excited about that effort. Kat and I and Russ even had talked about this for a while, and it really is part of the water plan action to really support the longevity of the basin roundtables in the IBCC, and with it just being 20 years since the creation of the act, and the groups thought it was a really good time to do that. I'm hoping that it provides a lot of really good feedback and constructive feedback for us so that we can continue to sort of help and support the basin roundtables in a way that is beneficial for all of you all as we move forward.
Okay. Thanks, Jeff. I don't see anybody online with a question, and there's none in the room, so hang on, I'm sure we'll get back to you.
Yeah, if things come up, you know where to find me. Just shout my name. I'll be listening. Yeah.
All right. Okay, Frank.
Good day. Sally's got it pulled up, ready to go. Thanks, Sally. I think we're right on time, correct?
I think we're a little ahead.
I'm gonna screw that up.
We're a little ahead of time.
Just kidding. This is the, well, good evening, everybody. This is the grant committee update, and we do have one grant request that's on the agenda tonight. Next slide, please. Our agenda, I'm gonna go quickly through an update on the schedule. This is actually phase 2 or cycle 2 of 4 cycles. I'll provide an update on the funding and where we are with funding for the cycle. Then we have one grant presentation. It's the DD&E WISE Reservoir Outlet Pipe Sleeving and Hardware Replacement Project. Say that 3 times, you'll win a prize. And in the packet, or on the website too, there was the documents for the grant that we're going to hear tonight. The minutes from the last grants meeting, which was December 10th. And then there was a grant folder for the grant. We're going to hear, which had the applications in it, one letter of support. And then there's a summary document, which provides a nice overview of the grant we're going to hear tonight. So that's our agenda for this evening. Next slide, please. Just a quick recap. This is the second cycle. It is January 14th, so we're in that review by full BRT as far as the grant tonight. The next cycle, the first milestone date is January 21st, which is next Wednesday. So if you know of anybody or any entities that's looking to apply for a grant, please let them know it's January 21st. And then our last cycle will start in March. Next slide. Quick overview of the financial funding status. If everyone recalls, we started this 2026 grant cycle with about $604,000 in our fund. The first cycle, we awarded approximately $110,000 in grants. 3 different grants has shown up there. This cycle, we have one grant that's going to present again this evening. And the request for that one is $110,342. So if that grant is approved to go to the CWCB for official approval, year-to-date grants projects will equal about $264,000. If you guys recall, at the November meeting, this BRT approved $500,000 for grant funding. So quick math, we would have about $235,000 left over for cycle 3 and cycle 4. Our total balance right now is $339,000. That's of course higher because we like to keep a little bit of money every year to carry over into the next cycle. So I'll stop there. Anyone have any questions on the financial part of this, the cycles and where we're at? Hearing and seeing none.
Don't anybody online.
Good.
Yeah, we think we're good.
All right, next slide. This ramp we're hearing tonight, again, is the DB&E Wides Reservoir Outlet Pipe Sleeving and Hardware Replacement Project. The presentation is gonna be the engineer of record, Eric, and I'll let Eric pronounce his last name when he comes up here. Yeah, Brian. He's with Colorado River Engineering, so he's here to present, and we also have one of the two owners, Charles Davidson. He's the owner. The other owner is Mike Mitchell with Mill Creek Ranch LLC. So they will be up here shortly. Again, quick recap of what's in the folder, the applications, the grant meeting summary, the minutes, and there is one letter of support in there. So next slide. So with that, I will turn it over to Eric to go through this. And then we'll have time for questions and answers. And then we'll let Steve kind of ask the board for official motion and approval. That's all you have.
Thank you, Frank.
Yep.
Yes, I'm Eric Reinaldson, Colorado River Engineering, and that's a Norwegian last name, and it's okay to get it wrong. Everybody does. So, DD and EY's Reservoir is, it's located on National Forest property. It has a surface area of 65 acres. It's located in Rio Blanco County near Yellow Jacket Pass and serves as irrigation supply for 2 different ranches. The dam is 41 feet in height and impounds 1,010 acre-feet of water. The dam is classified as significant hazard by Colorado Dam Safety, and the existing outlet pipe is a 15-inch corrugated metal pipe, which is old and rusted and near the end of its useful life. The state dam safety engineer has placed a conditionally satisfactory rating on the dam until the outlet system can be repaired, which means the state has not placed a storage restriction on the reservoir yet, but will most likely do so if it's not fixed. I have reached out to Matt Weisbrod, who is our local dam safety engineer in Plymouth Springs, and so he's aware that we're working on it, so he's pleased that we're working towards a solution, and so that should put out a storage restriction for another season. And also some further background information. The Martin Creek ditch serves as water supply to this reservoir, and it's a multiple mile-long ditch that Yellow Jacket Ranch has invested significantly and put a lot of improvements into that ditch. So our proposed solution is to install a cast-in-place PVC pipe liner, which will adhere to the CMP. This will create about a 1/2 inch thick sleeve, which is corrosion proof and serves to seal off any potential leaks from rusting. The liner material will be designed to handle the dam embankment loading. And we see this as a more cost-effective solution than breaching the dam, removing the existing pipe and installing a new outlet system. In order to install the liner, the existing concrete inlet structure and control gate will need to be removed. The control gate has experienced heavy corrosion and is old and needs to be replaced anyway. The air vent and gate stand encasement pipes are also in poor shape, as ice damage has pulled the air vent away from the connection. A new control gate with operator stem installed within an encasement pipe and new air vent will be installed along the upstream dam embankment with concrete support pedestals and protected with rock from potential ice damage. You can move on to the next slide, please. So these photos were taken in October of this year. I visited the site with our surveyor and we did a topographic survey. And we drew down the reservoir to here's the inlet structure. There's actually a concrete structure surrounding this trash rack. And you can see how the air vent has been detached. Here's my picture as I stuck my camera down into that trash rack. And this is the control gate right here. Next slide.
Here's a picture of the existing outlet pipe looking upstream from the outlet structure on the downstream side. This is 15-inch corrugated metal pipe. This is actually a new section of pipe which was installed during the enlargement, which was
1995.
So this is actually
That water is corrosive for some reason, because that was a brand new galvanized pipe 30 years ago. I was present when it was installed. And we don't know what the corrosion is caused from, but there's a lot of limestone in that area. We're thinking that if acid rain washes over limestone, you create sulfuric acid, which is pretty corrosive.
so the older part of the pipe is actually the old riveted style CMP, which is in worse shape than this. So it does need before the store water line. And so there's another part of this project which we're calling phase 2. So the state has another rule where the top 5 feet of the reservoir has to be able to be drawn down within 5 days. So the out system has to have that capacity. So our solution is to line this pipe, which will, we're gonna have a reduction in size. And the existing pipe is undersized to handle that already. And so our solution is to put in another high level pipe at 5 foot depth so that we're not digging out the whole dam. And it would be a larger pipe. It'll be less expensive than rebuilding the entire dam. And so that will be a phase 2, which is not a part of this project. Right now, we're just proposing putting in the liner and fixing this part. And then we would come back and do that at another time. Maybe next year. So our goal is to hopefully get this designed and submitted to the state this winter, ideally, and then construct this fall.
I'd just like to inject that in this particular reservoir was first filled by a guy named Aldrich, and he filled it for the first time in 1833. It's an old reservoir, and it's it's a very popular area for campers, hunters, fishermen, wind sailors, and whatever. So we don't want to breach this dam, and our ranches, both of our ranches together, we could well afford to do both phases, but we don't know what the future is going to bring as far as our own productivity, as far as money. And both of us are getting up in age, and both of us have large families, so we have a continuity there that our children will carry on after we're gone. So anyway, we really appreciate it for your consideration.
Yes, you have a slide that shows the, there you go.
Oh, yeah. That's the breakdown of costs. Okay, so you'll see in here, we have line items broken out for the improvements, and the major improvement obviously is the cast in place liner. It's actually a resin material which gets inserted through a sock, and then it's cured in place with air pressure. And so it's kind of a creative solution, which is really a good solution in a case like this. But unfortunately, we do need to remove that inlet structure because there's an angle fitting below the valve, which will restrict that sock from exiting. And so So we'll have to remove the inlet structure, so. Um. Yeah, it's very self-explanatory. So this includes engineering costs. We'll have to submit plans, technical specifications, and design report to state, seek approval prior to, before we build this, and then we'll, hopefully we can get approval in time early enough so we can have a good bid process with the contractor on board. That's all I have. Any questions for Eric? Yes, there are. Yeah.
I didn't hear what the reservoir is used for. Is there agriculture, production downstream?
Yeah, there's two different ranches that use it for irrigation. But it is on national forest land and.
We have what they call a permanent easement on it. And as long as we use it for agricultural purposes, we can keep the dam there. Two ranches are doing irrigated ag on all of that. We grow both alfalfa and we grow grass hay. We grow on average around 650 tons of hay a year. The Mill Creek Ranch has a couple of meadows that they also grow alfalfa and grass hay.
There's a lot of fishing, camping.
It's a private reservoir though on US Forest Service land.
Yeah,
There's no.
it was in existence before it was a forest. And when the forest took it over, they gave us a permit. It was only good for, on a basis of 10 years at a time. And there was an opportunity to get a permanent easement for the dam and reservoir and the Martin Creek ditch, which runs several miles back. It actually runs along the north side of Wilson Mountain, which is kind of a low mountain there. And at the end of Wilson Mountain, you'll look over to one side and you'll see Sleepy Cat Mountain, and then across, directly across from one end of our ditch is the 3 Points Mountain. And during the fire season, there was some people up above on 3 Points Mountain that started fire, and they had to put it out, but they used water out of this reservoir to extinguish that fire. So it was a handy thing to have at that time. There is public access all the time, public. There's ice fishermen in the winter. There's snowmobilers that go up there constantly. And there's wind sailors now, that's the newest thing. And then there's motorized, they can use electric motors. And the whole thing is stocked with lake trout, golden trout, rainbow trout, and whatever else you might find in there. No alligators yet.
That's pretty far. Curious, the breakdown on the funds, is the remainder gonna be paid by the project applicants, or have you applied for other funding from the state or Colorado River District or anything like that?
I could answer that, Jonathan. The total cost is, the total cost as projected is 331. They're asking for a third of that, or 110. The remainder would come from the two owners. Thank you.
Jim?
I just had a specific question about the cost of that liner at 155 grand. The county has done 4 of those in the last 6 months, and we didn't pay near that per linear foot for them, and I'm just curious, is there some unique situation here, but.
It's mostly, the access road. It's not it's just a dirt road once you get in there and narrow, windy, and not this was a number provided by Snowbridge, who does a lot of these reservoirs. If you have a contractor that is giving you better numbers, we'd love to invite them to bid it.
I just. You asked a question about pipeliner, he asked a question about a road access, so I'm not sure you heard his question.
It's expensive because of the mobilization is part of it.
So it's not the lining of the pipe or the materials involved. Your answer to the question is the access is expensive.
Okay, so there's multiple things. The mobilization, which is the access.
Okay.
To get equipment in it's a remote location, so there's
Okay.
money in there for that. This isn't just a sewer line, it's 8 feet deep, it's a 41-foot tall dam embankment, so the thickness of the liner needs to be thicker than a typical pipelining job. And that's, this isn't just my guess, this is a company who does this, gave us their costs. So this is the best information we have.
Mobilization is usually broke out as the different, so.
Right.
Curious that they did it that way.
Yeah, they didn't give us a bid, this is more just of a, the project hasn't been designed yet, so they didn't have any bid documents.
Thank you.
They're not cheap. We got a quote on a similar situation. They don't really want to give you a hard money bid, but it does take them a lot to get their equipment set up at the dam site, get it up there. Actual doing it doesn't take quite as long as actually getting up there and prepping it, so.
You're used to $800 a foot.
They kind of give similar price to us on another thing. It was like probably 100, but it was about half that. So it's with what they're going for in some of these remote dams, I think.
Okay, well, I don't see any other questions. Frank, do you have anything?
Nope.
Else?
I guess I have one more question. So you said you have to build an outlet for the 5-foot drawdown for the state. Right. Would the state, if you don't do that, will the state allow you to fill? Let's say we do this project and give you the money, grant the money to you. And then for some reason you don't do that other project, will the state limit your fill?
Well, that's a good conversation to have up front, but the existing pipe doesn't meet that regulation. And so the capacity is not there to begin with. I think as long as we have a plan in place moving forward, how are we gonna address all of these problems and, they don't all have to be done at once, but, they just wanna hear a commitment that we're moving forward towards that.
Okay,
Thank you.
so thanks, Eric. So hearing no other questions, seeing none online. I would take a motion, Gunner moves to support the recommendation of the grant committee for approval of $110,342 WSRF funds for the BD&E Noise Reservoir Outlet Pipe Sleeving and hardware replacement. Okay, I'll say that 3 times fast. All right, so I have a motion. Do I have a second? I'll second.
Second.
Feel better.
Good.
Okay, so we have a motion in a second. Any further discussion? Yeah, just a question that is it 1/3 or 110, or it should say whichever is less?
I think at the grant committee level, we agreed to the actual amount of 110.
That's your recommendation, that's that's a motion.
Yeah. If it's 1/3 is probably 130 bucks to that. Yeah.
Okay, so hearing no other discussion, all in favor of approval of this grant request, please say aye.
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 Okay, all opposed, say nay. Okay. The ayes have it.
I have just one more final thought slide, just as a reminder, the next cycle. Applications are due on the 21st, then our grants meeting is February 11th. All are welcome. And then we will hear any grant requests and or applications that come in at the March 11th meeting, which is the next BRT meeting. Any questions or comments?
Have there been any applications for this cycle yet?
Not that have come across my email or any phone calls, Will, so no, from my standpoint.
Frank, can you remind me and the roundtable members about follow through after a grant's been done, a project's been finalized? Do they come back to you or do they go to the state?
The requirement is they have to submit reports, progress reports every 6 months. And those are generally submitted directly to CWCB, and then we try to get a hold of those and load them to the website. So they are available to look at. There's a recent one we just loaded for the sheriff reservoir and everything. And then what we've done a few things in the past. We've had, as an example, the Mayville Ditch Company come in after kind of go through the project. That was a pretty substantial project. So that option is available too, of course, agenda permitting and time. So that's the requirement that they report to CWC.
And just a comment from the executive committee, what we're trying to do for newer members is to, we don't want to spend an hour discussing these at this meeting. So there's a grants committee meeting. So if you're a tire kicker, if you really like to dive into these grant applications, go to the grant committee. Same thing with the Big River Committee. We're going to do a very cursory review of what happened. If you want to participate in that, and we want to encourage you to participate. That meeting we had 18 people in the room for the Big River Committee today, and we plus another half a dozen online. Attend the meeting and fully participate because we want your involvement. But because of the volume of stuff we have to cover in this meeting, that's why you're seeing some pretty short presentations.
Thanks, Ken.
So we have 6 meetings a year, 3 hours apiece. That's 18 hours that we're asking people to be here. So the heavy lifting of grants and Big River and EPO and everything else is going to be done at the committee level. And then we'll hear summaries pretty much. So if there's a subject that you want to dive into or hear more about, the committee meetings, or Sally gets them all up on the website when the meetings are and links to them, and we load up all the meeting materials and the agendas and that sort of thing for them on our YampleWhiteGreen.com website. So, all right, so on to Colorado River District update, Rebecca.
Yes. And go to the next one, Sally. Thank you. So we have our first quarterly board meeting coming up next week. Those are, of course, always open to the public if you're interested. And our agenda was just posted today. One of the topics on our board meeting agenda, Division 5 just got a new engineer, Taylor Benton, and he was previously with Colorado Springs Utilities. He will be coming to present at our board meeting. We're also excited to highlight that our community funding partnership grant program is turning 5 years old this year, which is kind of incredible. So we're celebrating that. We have our annual report online. If you're interested in looking at that, it's on our website that highlights all of our projects that we did or that we funded this year. And we're also hoping to have the presentation at a future Basin Roundtable meeting to kind of talk about that program and where we've come in the past 5 years and where we're hoping to go with that. As you guys know, that program was voted on by you all, by everyone within the district. So we want to be able to take that back to the Basin Roundtables to be able to showcase that to everyone. And then also, this is a different order than I was used to, but you guys may have heard in November that the CWCB approved our in-stream flow donation for the Shoshone water rights. You guys are probably tired of hearing about this project, but that was a really big milestone for the project. It essentially means that the Shoshone hydropower right can be used by the CWCB for an in-stream flow purpose after we go through the water court process. And we are now starting that water court process, that application for water court was just filed in December, which is our application to add an in-stream flow right to the hydropower water right for beneficial use. So big milestone there.
It shouldn't take more than a decade.
I don't think this water court case is gonna be contentious at all.
Spoken like a district employee.
Yeah. Optimism. Next slide, please. And then Jeff mentioned our bi-weekly updates on what's happening at the Colorado legislature that just opened up today. The River District can take positions on bills. So if you're interested in hearing what our position is on those water bills, you're of course welcome to tune in or to get onto our email list by emailing smore@brwcd.org. And then this was supposed to be on my last slide. I got that mixed up, but also in our board meeting coming up next week, our board will be voting on, hopefully to approve our USGS gauging joint funding agreement. This is something I didn't really know about before I started at the River District, but the River District, along with the USGS and partners throughout all of the basins that we work with, including the Yampa and the White, fund this huge monitoring program with the USGS for stream gauges and for water quality essentially. And that total program is 1.6 million for this year. So it's huge, but good chance that if you're looking at a gauge within the Yampa or the White Basin, it's not just funded by USGS, it's funded by us and maybe Upper Yampa Water Conservancy District or Mount Werner, or Rio Blanco County. There's a ton of different collaborators that all come in to fund that USGS gauge system program. And something that we don't always really notice because it's just there. But our board is voting on that, hopefully to approve our funding for that next week.
Is there, Rebecca, is there additional gauges that would be installed, or this is just maintenance and upkeep on the existing fleet of gauges?
Yeah, good question, Steve. It's just continuing that the existing gauges. It is a program that's flexible, so we can make changes, and we're always interested in hearing from stakeholders, changes are warranted. But that cost is just to, have those gauges continue and paying the USGS for their time to do all that work. And then just, we all know that we're facing historic drought conditions on West Slope, so not gonna dwell on that. Next slide, please, Sally. Our State of the River meetings are coming up this spring. We're really excited to have these. There is one note that our Upper Yampa one for Steamboat actually changed. We're gonna have that on March 9th instead of April 15th. So ignore the April 15th date, that just got changed today. We're doing it earlier, March 10th. And then the next night, we'll do our Lower Yampa River in Craig, March 10th. And then the Basin Roundtable meeting will be March 11th. So if you want 3 nights in a row of water updates, I will be at all of them, so please join me. Just kidding, that would be a lot. But those, and then the White River will be a little bit later in April 16th and weaker this year. Next slide, please, Sally. This is something that I may have gotten an update on the last meeting when I wasn't here in November, unfortunately, but it's a new kind of initiative that the River District is working on. We all know over the past few years, especially, that there's a lot of challenges with aging infrastructure. And at the same time as we have all this aging infrastructure, especially for ag, we have rising costs. The past 5 years, we've had just skyrocketing costs to, fix head gates and diversion. And so we came up with this idea and our board approved it in October to essentially help irrigators and ditch companies and irrigation companies basically get to kind of this financially sustainable place to be able to address their aging infrastructure needs. Because right now we've seen that there's a lot of grants just drying up. Federal and state dollars are not always available. And so we need to figure out how to be financially sustainable. So our board approved 2 different initiatives. First one is a pilot project, pilot grant that will be awarded to up to 5 irrigation companies to fund up to 85% of the funding costs to do a capital improvement plan and a rate study to essentially look at those aging infrastructure needs and plan for the future, both financially and, you know, kind of on that capital improvement of what projects are coming up. That deadline, if you know of an irrigation or ditch company interested in applying, that deadline is February 15th. I'm happy to answer questions, but to learn more, you should definitely talk to Melissa, my colleague, who will be heading that grant program. And then the second initiative, which I think is even more exciting, is that we are creating a toolkit that ditch and irrigation companies can download from our website. You don't need to apply for grants. You don't need to tell us you're using it. You just go to our website and download it. It's going to be an Excel document that's easy to use, where you basically put in annual ditch costs or debt or revenue coming in. Maybe you have a big project you want to do 5 years out. You put in an anticipated cost for that. And it basically spits out, you know, kind of some assessment or rate structure ideas for how you can fund those capital improvement projects and annual maintenance. So that is in progress. We haven't finished that yet. We're working on getting that contracted through a consultant company to develop. But happy to talk about that more if you're interested, and we hope it's useful for people. So definitely willing to hear thoughts if you have any. Next slide, Sally. Oh, that's it. That's all I have. Yeah. Thanks. Any questions?
Thanks for your support of USGS.
Yeah, I can talk about that all day. So if you ever have questions or thoughts on that program, happy to hear.
Do you also have a list of potential additional gauging sites that you are proposing to the USGS?
You know, that's a really good question, Ken. So I actually recently kind of took over management of this program in our office. And that's one of the things that's kind of on my list for the future. And, you know, that's something that I want to work on with stakeholders. You know, we at the River District look at the gauges, but we're not looking at it and, you know, to make operational decisions every day. So it's something that we're hoping to work with, you know, people more on the ground to see if the existing, you know, system is adequate or if there are other locations that.
Well, the state engineer's office might have a few ideas as well.
Yeah. So always happy to hear
you.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have good ideas.
Go ahead, Bill. I was just curious, and I'm not sure if I heard it right, to say there but for the Shoshone, the federal dollars for the Shoshone water right are not going to be issued until the court case is settled.
Yeah, I don't know the specifics on that. We're still working with, you know, our partners and, you know, political representatives to try to shake those dollars loose, but I think it's looking a little bit less hopeful at this point, but we're still working on it.
That's the rumor from credible sources.
Still unknown.
And if you think about it, it sounds like extortion, but it's probably what's going on.
Like, how long could the court take to, is there any?
Well, they gotta have a record of decision by what, midsummer, late summer at the latest, because it's gotta be in effect on October 1, so. The decision will be out soon, relatively. Settling, if they also require that there be no legal, no court cases attached to it.
So the October 1st deadline is because that's when the agreement with Excel expires or whatever.
That's when the agreement between the upper and lower basin states expires. There's no longer two thousand seven operating agreement deadline expires, so they have to have something in place.
And that would affect this water right?
It will just affect the federal funding.
It'll affect the federal
So,
funding.
yeah, that deadline is tied to the federal funding for, you know, how those dollars might get.
Our Headwaters project has a similar amount of money that's pending.
We have a longer, later deadline with Excel, so
Right.
not quite up to the wire.
So the Shoshone still has to go through the water court case with the courts and quantify the numbers that's still out there. So
So a couple of years ago, Rebecca, Ken and I and Chuck Whiteman toured the White River, and we happened to cross the USGS crew that was maintaining one, and at that time they were trying to get rid of gauges. Yeah. Do you know, are they kind of in stasis now, or they're not losing any, but they're not gaining any, or do you have any idea?
That's a good question. You know, most of the gauges on the West Slope are funded by more than just the USGS. They're funded by another entity as well. Not all of them by us. And so if they're pulling a gauge, it's likely because that funder is no longer interested in providing funding for that gauge. I haven't heard of anything being pulled recently in the last few years. But unfortunately, what we're seeing with the USGS is their funding from Congress at a federal level has not increased in like many years, like a decade. And so the amount that they can put into gauges has remained stagnant, but their operating costs have of course increased, as we've seen everywhere, which means that partners who are funding like us and counties and municipalities and water conservancy districts, our costs are rising at a much higher rate than just the inflation percentage, as we're covering their inflation as well. So, if things are being pulled, it's probably because of a inability to fund to pay for it.
I mean, just to tag on, our hydrography program works with the USGS because we obviously use their gauges for doing administration, where we don't have state gauges, because we operate our own gauging network. It's pretty robust, more so in some areas than others where there's gaps in GS gauges, and I'm not aware of any like concerted efforts with full gauges. In fact, the BIL funding that came through the UCRC is funding this additional gauge in the Grand Junction area above the confluence of the Gunnison and the Colorado River, and also one I believe at Rock Creek. So there were some additional gauges, but those came from funding through this BIL program, Colorado River funds. But that doesn't mean that they won't. They typically go in cycles of where they pull gauges and we've taken over some of the gauges for them, or like they ask others to contribute more. But even though they've had this, stagnant funding, we haven't heard of any plans to remove lots of gauges. Okay.
All right. Thanks, Rebecca.
Yeah.
Okay, Beppo, Sally?
Not last tonight. I'm pretty excited. I'll take just a couple minutes to go over what we've been working on really hard in Beppo, which is the story map. But first I wanted to let you know, I'll just kind of go through this. This is a 2025 Beppo grant. It says we have $1,900 left. We do not. We've fully expended the 2025 Beppo grant. This just hasn't been updated. We are working on using our 2026 Beppo grant, which was for $25,000. I'm looking at phase 2 is kind of what we're talking about for our next. We have $11,758 for our next project in 2026. And Patrick Spango and I and Ken, we're thinking of using some of that money to do some of the marketing for the story map that we've spent a lot of money on. So I have reached out to Blue Fire Consulting, who we've worked with in the past, to see what their availability is. I haven't heard back from them yet. I am meeting with Kristen to talk about this the distribution of the story map and how we're gonna attack it. So Blue Flyer was one of our strategies for that. We do have some, it says we've got phase 2 of the story map development. We've got $5,000 for that. We're not gonna run into do a phase 2 right away this year. We're going to sit on our story map, see how it works for us a little bit, and run some Google Analytics. See how many people are visiting it. What kind of upgrades we want to make in the future, maybe for a possible phase 2. So we're not gonna go out and work on a phase 2 right away, so we will have some extra money. There are going to be some slight overages probably due from the story map because we are doing quite a bit of editing. But if we go over by anything substantial, we'll have another meeting and talk about that. Those invoices should come in within the week. We're not expecting big overages, so. I do want to say thank you to Anna and Anna Ryling with Four Corners Consulting and Kristen Jesperson. We worked really hard on the story map, and thank you everybody for your edits. It's coming together amazingly. We showed it at the last PEPO meeting. Come to the PEPO meetings. They're now right before the executive committee meetings. So we're doing the final edits. Those should be in by the end of this week. And hopefully we'll have the story map up on our website in about a month, I'd say. So we are looking to have ideas of distribution. So if we're gonna share it with all our partners who are on the story map, hopefully they can help us share our story. Kristen and I are talking about writing an executive summary or a press release to let everybody know about it. So please spread the word when it comes out. Let's see, what else do we have? We do have $3,300 that is mandatory to spend this year on print ads. So I'm trying to start thinking about those this year. Another thing that we're considering Blue Flyer for, since we have the new infographics. Just it's above my skill set and just a little bit of my capacity. So we're thinking of, since we have someone we've used before, maybe they can help us out with that. Another idea for print ads we're thinking about are some of these new IBCC topics, storage, agriculture, preserving agriculture, those kind of things. That's to be determined. We've got a couple of newspaper articles that we have talked about. At this point, we're talking about the first one being the story map, and then another of value of flood irrigation. And
any suggestions? What's a relevant topic for a newspaper article talking about brown people?
I would say the state engineer's visit to our roundtable is current. Probably the very first article we should have written.
We only give them 10 minutes.
Well, it's only a 500-word article, so.
We can have
Sure, yeah,
draft.
as long as we can
review the draft. We can have a draft up for it.
Yeah.
When
are the articles to be, is this in the next?
so our new, these are for our Ag Alliance contract. So we've got the first one in May. We are thinking of the story map since it'll be brand new. Then we've got July, August, and October. So October, usually Yamatika will do their recap. So we've got these summer ones to think about.
Come on, yeah, you've got
Come on,
one
Ken.
on recreation.
And more drought.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah. It's gonna snow like that.
You're gonna have to start
this next to Rebecca.
Doom and gloom.
Just, we experimented, here in 26 with moving Peppo. In the past, we've done Big River Committee at 3 and Peppo at 4 and then the roundtable. And we decided to try moving Peppo to a week earlier. We do our executive committee on Wednesday prior to this. And that seems to have worked really well. We had good attendance, a lot of the executive committee members, but all of you are welcome. And so it'll be either at 3:30 or 4. It'll be on the website when it starts.
And it's online only, so it's not in person.
Yeah, it's online only, but we're always welcome. I mind you again, it is not just the committee's responsibility to do PEPAL. That's all of us. All of us are messengers of what the materials that we cover here and the information that you learn. Please share it. Thank you.
Especially when it comes to the print advertising, let me know what you want to see. I need some guidance. I would love some guidance. We've got the state infographics to work with. But what messaging you want to see, I would love to hear, and Ken would like to hear, so send it our way. Possible field trip ideas. One of the other things that Ken proposed is that we move our meetings. So, the proposition is that we would have 4 yearly meetings in Craig, 1 in Steamboat and 1 in Meeker. So that would kind of get us to all parts of the basin. Then we could have maybe some small field trips, maybe 1 in Steamboat if it's gonna be there, 1 in Meeker if it's gonna be there prior to the meeting. So that is something Ken has proposed. I'm not sure how far we're gonna go with that tonight, so. We didn't really go
The next
that far.
PEPAL meeting, we'll be
Yeah,
discussing it.
we'll talk about it next. So that's our proposition. Let us know what you think about that.
But it's most likely the July meeting and the September meeting, then it's until 4th of July in Meeker and September in Steamboat somewhere.
And our one caveat is that in Meeker, we didn't have excellent Wi-Fi, so we are looking for a place that would have really stable Wi-Fi for a lot of people. Is the capacity problem. for the
Yeah,
Wi-Fi.
Chris is helping us with that.
Yeah, and so let's see, as far as the upcoming events, I did want to let you guys know that we have a new Quench Soil Moisture website out. It's not mine, it's CSU's. But it does show all the Colorado soil moisture sites within the state. And it is on the website, so check it out. It's some interactive features to look at some of the data, so that's exciting. Colorado District Board of Directors meetings, CWCD board meeting, Colorado Water Congress and IBCC, and I will add Bernampa's to the website also. So these can be found on the website. And I had no other partner updates unless somebody online has one tonight. But that's all I have for tonight.
Okay, any questions for Sally? I don't see anybody online, so. Okay, thank you, Sally. Big River Committee, IBCC. Jeff?
It's not Jeff Myers.
Yeah, we need to change that.
Yeah.
So it's Ken and Jonathan and. Well, thanks for everybody that attended the Big River Committee today. We had, like I said, really good attendance. You heard several times how good explanations of this no and low regrets engage the grassroots process that we're gonna be using for the next 3 years. So I know you're kind of hoping that this isn't gonna be the normal, but it's gonna be the normal. That's what we're gonna, and in fact, it will start to take more and more time as we move forward, because we'll have to review with you first what the consensus is statewide about storage ideas. Make sure that we're on the right page, that everybody's in agreement what the consensus was. And then we'll at the same meeting, move on into our preserving agriculture. And so once we get 8 of these balls in the air, you can imagine that it'll take an increasing amount of time. So we'll, and Jonathan and I'll work on that to make that as as easy as possible, I think. Jonathan's gonna go through the notes that we had today and tell us how he wants to move forward.
Yeah,
Take it away,
so,
Jonathan.
today and last month, or last meeting, we went through and brainstormed kind of concepts that our area has for storage and the needs and opportunities, the challenges involved, what kind of barriers to implementation exist. And so we started getting some rough notes, both from both of those sessions. And what we're gonna do is Ken and I are gonna work to clean those up a little bit through this week. And I will work with, I guess, Sally to get those out to the membership by next Wednesday. And you all will have the opportunity to. You'll have to back that. But we'll get those out to you by next Wednesday. You'll be able to see what people have already been contributing. And then have freedom of your own time to think through that, add any of your own thoughts. And so we'll get those to you. That'll be the 21st, next Wednesday. And we'd like to have those back by the following Friday, which would be January 30th. That will give Ken and I some time to get those cleaned up again, and he'll take them to the subcommittee meeting with the IBCC. But that's our plan, to make sure everyone has the right amount of time to go through those, give it some extra thought, and be able to contribute your ideas to us. So, does that sound good, Sally, if I get that to you next week? Great. Any questions on that?
No, but thank you guys for giving us the extra opportunity to put some thoughts in on that.
You bet. You're welcome. Unless there's other questions.
I will also, Ken, I'll add some of that basic information that we've been kind of spewing out, but it's hard to, really capture all of that. So we'll also have some, like their pamphlet and the flyer that they have that kind of lays out the process and purpose of all of this.
Yeah, there's some slides that they've given us, and we'll include that to help you, use a visual representation of what we have a timeline set out from today through 2033's adoption of the new employee plan. So you can see the chronology of what we're doing and why this is really the foundational work for not only the next water plan, but how to make sure that we're implementing what we already have in place. So really appreciate your participation, and we've worked really hard to give you guys a stronger voice at the state level. Let's take advantage of it.
So Will, is there anything you want to summarize from the Big River Committee? And we are giving Jason some time to kind of discuss. So Jason was here for the Big River. Gave about 30 minutes, give or take. So however you want.
Yeah, I'm just gonna be really brief and just highlight it real quickly. One of the things Rebecca talked about that I wasn't quite looking at is when you look at where we're at with the amount of precip we've been having, it's not quite as bleak as when you look at snowpack and snow water equivalent. I mean, we're set like 75% snow water equivalent with snowpack year, and what were you saying? It's like 98% for if you include precipitation, total precip.
Just trying to look for the bright side, something good.
Well, it's pretty bright. I mean, because you look at 75%, it's just like, oh my God, it's terrible. And it's not good, but it's near historic lows for snowpack, as everybody knows. The other big thing is the draft EIS came out for the post 2026 operation of Paladin. Recently came out. I think everyone's hopeful that, 7 states are still going to reach an agreement, but by default, the EIS will govern in the absence of that. There's 5 alternatives, and we have starting January 16th through March 2nd to basically have some public comment on those alternatives. After we talked about it during the Big River meeting, we're going to kind of wait for a couple of weeks to kind of get some more information, because we're not really, no one's digested these 5 alternatives properly at this level. So we're kind of hoping for some more like information, hopefully from the CWCB, and we're told that's what's coming. But that was kind of the highlight there. And I just want to reiterate that, you know, Ken and Jonathan, we're looking for some input, you know, pretty strongly on this storage topic, so that they can take it to the IVCC meetings and then bring it back to us. So that's about all I have. Public comment, that's important.
Okay. Jason, the floor is yours for the second time
The
tonight.
second time tonight with a lot of the same people, so there's a few new people in the room, but there was a lot of the same people. So I'm not gonna go probably 30 minutes, but we can, people can ask me some questions afterwards if we have some.
Okay.
But, I think what I came to talk about was, it says curtailment plan. I'm not sure it's really that. It's also not rulemaking yet. But, you all know, we've heard the stories of low snowpack. We've had 25 years of drought. Our, top line message, you know, as far as Colorado River Compact curtailment is that, you know, we're in compliance with the compact. We've always been in compliance with the compact. In any way that you measure compact compliance that we carry. So there hasn't been any reason for the state engineer's office to do any curtailment for the compact, unlike basins, you know, it's the South Platte, the Arkansas, and the Rio Grande. And actually, the La Plata is the only river in the Colorado Basin that we do compact compliance on. But given the you know, rapidly declining hydrology, the 25-year drought that we've been in, and the fact that, you know, you're looking at reservoir levels continuing to drop, and the 10-year rolling average will be fairly continuing to drop. We've, you know, decided that it's appropriate to at least start to think about what that might look like should we be in the position where the Upper Colorado River Commission, which they have the authority through the Upper Colorado River Compact, to make a finding that the upper basin has been deficient in delivering water to the lower basin. And then they also are in charge, or, you know, they're vested with the authority because we, as the 4 basin states, gave them this authority when we created them through signing of the compact, to what proportion each of the 4 upper basin states is responsible for producing of whatever water we need to produce to meet our compact obligations. And so this process I'm gonna just explain briefly is primarily just strictly about that. It's not about voluntary or temporary conservation programs. Those are more like pre-compact type, you know, or compact forbearance or stalling type of activities. This is about, you know, what would the state engineer's office do if we had notice that we needed to deliver water and we had to do mandatory curtailments in order to do that? How would we make decisions on what we were, you know, how we're going to make those curtailments? In our basins where we do compact curtailment in South Platte, Arkansas, and the Rio Grande, we do not have rules. We don't have, you know, specific rules passed through the state water court. We operate through the statutory authority given to the state engineer to make and enforce regulations to make sure that we comply with the compact, and we take very seriously our obligations. Supreme Court has told us we need to take our obligations to meet our compact commitments seriously, to the extent that it, you know, essentially comes in front of other priorities. And so we want to maximize beneficial use of the water we're entitled to under these agreements we've signed with surrounding states under compacts, including in Colorado. And so what I'm starting at, or I've announced that I'm starting at the Water Resources and Ag Review Committee in August, and I've had some questions about, you know, what did I mean?
and I think that's why I'm here, why you've asked me here to talk is about doing some listening sessions. That's kind of a phase one of determining, does the state engineer and my office need rules to make decisions on how we would determine who would get curtailed in that situation? If we do need them, you know, what might people be concerned about? What might people think they should look like and consider? And so we are starting small because, you know, process that's gonna be statewide impact that could be pretty, you know, contentious in the end. Trying to start small with very small meetings with staff level of some entities that represent large groups of water users that use West Slope water. And also entities that may have been thinking about this or done risk studies in the past, get their thoughts that we can kind of coalesce on paper, and we're probably gonna find out, you know, there's some differences of opinion. And I'm intending to basically listen, like I said, I mean, listening session can be kind of a buzzword, but in this case, we aren't intending to do a lot of talking or even arguing or saying, well, we don't agree with that. Mostly just, I wanna hear these folks tell me what they think, and so that then we can go back out and broaden that to a more public, potentially with roundtables and with large, you know, like Grand Valley water users, those kinds of groups. And then eventually, if, you know, the result is that we do need to do rules so that we can make those decisions, maybe in a less risky way, for, you know, legal reasons or otherwise. We would be going through a full public process that would involve public meetings, it would involve drafts. But we're not anywhere near that right now, so there's concerns that, you know, Jason's got these drafts of rules in his back pocket that he's thinking about implementing. It's not the case, I don't. I'm looking to hear from people what their thoughts are before we even start to talk about concepts, so. The first phase, actually, I would consider as kind of measurement rules that have already been implemented in Division 6 and Division 7. And we're working on getting them through the water court in Divisions 5 and 4 right now. That was to some level, the purpose of those measurement rules was to recognize the fact that with the drier future we're facing, that there's going to be increased administration required because there's increased stress on water resources, and that may include up to compact administration. And doing a widespread, you know, like compact administration or administration on a basin-wide level is hard to do without measurement, and it's hard to get measurement in an emergency situation where we're trying to administer water without measurement. So now we're sending out hundreds of orders. So it's an effective, proactive way to kind of start that. So I'm saying first phase is these listening sessions. Really, it was kind of measuring rules to get measuring in a more consistent fashion across the western slope. So the last thing I will say, if I missed it, I apologize to the CDC staff, but the measurement rules are also being kind of married with some BIL money that is available for people to get funding for measurement devices to be put in, and the CWCB has a contractor, SGM, that's going to be running that process. I believe the application deadline for the first phase, which is Division 6 and 7 that have rules in place, is January 31st.
Yeah, into this month.
Into this month, and then there's a phase 2, and they are taking, you know, statements of interest from people that are interested in Divisions 4 and 5, but because one, we didn't have the resources to do all 4 divisions just all at once. Because a lot of this is going to be smaller type grants for small measuring devices. And 2, the rules aren't in effect in those 2 divisions yet because we're still working through the court process. So that's all I have for you tonight. If you have additional questions.
Jason, really 2 questions. First is this process of doing Colorado River compact compliance. listening session, potential rulemaking, et cetera. How, are you coordinating that with Attorney General Weiser and the Attorney General's office? And the same sort of question about their involvement, with just your, how do you interact with them as far as like trying to get good guidance? Or do you have your own legal department that does that?
That's a good question. I do not have my own legal department. Some states, agencies have their own in-house legal department, but the state of Colorado many decades ago, vested all of the legal counsel for all of its agencies within the AG's office. So, but I do have dedicated AG staff for both the Water Resources Unit, which is the unit that represents my office in interstate water court matters and for enforcement actions. And then we have a federal and interstate unit that Lane Leoniak, who I'm sure you met, is the head of. And that is made up of the attorneys that represent the state, both Division of Water Resources and CWCB in compact issues. And so, yes, we are working with them. My team that's doing these listening sessions is small. It's myself, Amy Ostick, and a representative from the AG's office.
Oh, interesting.
So, I mean, just so that I have a broad perspective, listening to the comments that we're getting from these entities. So, yes.
Thank you.
The long answer to your question is yes.
No, that's
Short answer to your question, yes.
That's a good answer. Thank you. Andy?
Yeah, Jason, there are a few people who weren't here for our longer discussion earlier. I think your answer to my question earlier about what you would do in the absence of the rules would be important for everyone else to hear. It was a good answer.
Sure. Yeah, and so in the absence of rules, and, to some extent, rules might have to hew closely to the prior appropriation doctrine, but we would be using the prior appropriation doctrine to make those decisions. So you have, the compact has, protects pre-compact water rights. So pre-22, pre-29, there's some different interpretations there. And then, so for post-compact water rights, it would be prior appropriation doctrine. But there are some complications to that, because I think, some people would say, well, okay, that's easy, right? Just do prior appropriation. Well, in the South Platte and in the Arkansas and in the Rio Grande, that is fairly simple, because we're talking about one major river leaving the state at one location that has all of its water rights tabulated in one system, where the courts, had a adjudication scheme. In this case, we'd be talking about 4 different divisions that many different district courts and now division courts that have different adjudication dates, because this is primarily affecting water rights, not recently adjudicated, but adjudicated in that period between compact and the 1969 Water Rights Determination and Administration Act. And so one complication of, just saying, well, yeah, just do prior appropriation is, how do you interweave those priorities together between the divisions and determine who's actually junior? So there are some complications even with just doing prior appropriation. I think that's somewhat close to the answer I gave before.
Yes, thank you very much.
Go ahead, Will. So you mentioned something about it. If we look into a few aspects and we do a few things, there might be a potential that any kind of agreement on, how need would include a curtailment claim by the lower basin states. Could you maybe elaborate on that a little bit more, or
Sure,
clarify it a little bit more?
I mean, I think we've been clear that one of the negotiating positions for the state of Colorado is that if we agree to a 7-state consensus alternative that ends up as a part of the EIS, which is still the goal, which is still why we had the big river meeting, we talked about the fact that the negotiating team is in Salt Lake City most of the week this week doing just that. But if we do that, then that needs to include a provision that should the reservoirs be operated under these guidelines, and maybe we do whatever parallel activities that include
voluntary conservation measures that are prescribed, that there would not be a claim by the lower basin that we are deficient in delivering the water required under the compact. And so that would, you know, if it's a 20-year deal, that would mean 20 years of some certainty that we wouldn't, that my office wouldn't need to be doing actual compact channel, which, you know, would get me past my retirement. So I'm chatting with Becky Mitchell, who's like, come on, no. So anyway, that is true. That's been one of our, and not just ours, that's the upper basin states negotiating positions. That we agree to something, then that's one of the provisions that you want to see.
That's pretty huge, I think.
Hey, anybody have any questions online for Jason?
No, Ashley Garrison did put in the measurement device information and application on the chat, and it is also on the website, our website.
Okay, perfect.
Thanks for coming up here. This is quite a field trip. Thank you very much. I enjoyed being here, so thank you for having me. Anytime.
Okay, so next on the agenda is bylaws committee. So we have, there's a bylaws folder. Yeah, there should be a PowerPoint over there.
Got it.
Okay. So at our last meeting in November, there was some concern that we may be running afoul of some of our bylaws. So a group of volunteers was selected. A little strong arming was done by me, but so we had a bylaws committee meeting on December 1st. And the bylaws committee at this point consists of myself, the two vice chairs, Frank from the Yampa and Chris Collins from the White River. And Mike Camblin, who's our CWCB rep. And then Andy volunteered, and Jackie was kind of the one that brought it to our attention. And she's also been the lead on the bylaws committee for a long time, ever since I've been on the committee. She's handled most of the bylaws changes. So anyway, we met on December 1st. We had a laundry list of things to look at. We did that. Came up with a few suggestions. Came up with more questions than answers, unfortunately. And basically it was decided that we would seek some input from Jeff Rodriguez and others from the CWCB to try to get some clarification. So what I thought I would do is just kind of go over the items that we thought maybe needed some attention in our bylaws. And then talk about some other problems that came up when we reached out to CWCB. So go ahead, Jelly.
I'll make it bigger.
Well, please make it bigger.
I'm gonna be. I'm gonna be mistake.
Yeah, 200%.
There you go.
250.
So some of the additional concerns, I've got about 10 or 11 slides. So they're not all concerned. They're not all concerns, but there were some really funny. There was some really funny verbiage from the Garfield County representative. I don't know why, but we thought, well, we'll just make it look like Brown County, Moffett County, and Rio Blanco County. Garfield County shouldn't say anything other than the same thing. So that's not going to be a problem. We have enough information. We can come to a resolution on that. Section 6 on the voting, our bylaws do not address the requirement to allow virtual attendance by Zoom or telephone, so we don't have the ability to vote by Zoom or by telephone. But back in the COVID, defined years, the state of Colorado came up with some guidance. So Jeff Rodriguez supplied us with that, guidance, and we'll be able to tailor our voting, the way we vote online using Zoom. So that shouldn't be a problem. We have the information for that. Section 9, informal action, email permissions for things like letters of support. You just witnessed one tonight where the headwaters of the Colorado, everybody had a chance to review it. Everybody, the ones that wanted to email in to so that we could send that letter on. And the best practice was to ratify, is to accept that type of action via email and then ratify it at your next full meeting. So we just need to make our bylaws say that same thing. Go ahead, Sally. So the environmental representative, there were a lot of questions about that. I was requested by the committee to make some inquiries with the other basin roundtables about what kind of documentation that they get from the environmental groups and how they fill those seats. And if I didn't know there was 9 basin roundtables, I'd say I got an even dozen different answers on how people were doing it. So, but we do have a lot of different approaches that the other roundtables have taken. We've also asked the AG's office to weigh in to whether a conservation district would fall under the environmental or not. We have not heard back from that, thus we haven't had a second bylaws meeting since then. And then we had a question about the conservation district being eligible for that. That's the one that we asked the AG's office to weigh in on. So we're kind of waiting on that at this point, to see what they have to say. I think CWCB ultimately is going to weigh in on that as well. They just haven't yet. So we met on December 1st. I wrote the letter. It took them a couple weeks to digest it, and then Christmas and New Year hit. So it was a bad time to try to get any information out of people that mostly were probably on vacation. So unfortunately. So we're still waiting on a few things for that. Go ahead, Sally. So we need to discuss the attendance policy for appointed positions. So our attendance policy is a very light gray. Basically it says if you don't attend, then I as the chair or Frank and Chris as the vice chair write a letter to the people saying, hey, you need to start attending meetings. I asked the other basin roundtables what they're doing, and I got 9 basin roundtables gave us another dozen answers. Some of them say if you miss 2 meetings, you're not going to be a member. You're not going to be you'll be able to come to the meetings, but until they vote you back on, you can't be a member. Right? So it's wild the swing of how people treat that. And then so that was one. So Jeff has provided some other things for us to think about. As a bylaws committee, we will probably try to figure out what's gonna work for our basin.
Yes.
And that's for the appointed positions. That's not the elected positions. That's the appointed positions. And then there was a question about the IBCC representative being from out of state in Wyoming. That's Jonathan. We were all aware when we voted Jonathan in on that. So the Becky Mitchell and her group, the IBCC group, has been asked to weigh in on that. We haven't heard a response from that, so we don't know what they think of that. There were questions that were asked of our CWCB representative, Mike Hamlin, and others, about that. The questions were asked, the questions were answered. Nobody's really asking more questions, but like I said, we expect maybe to hear back by the end of this month. I'm hoping. So go ahead, Sally. Positions voted on, so we had several issues with how we're voting on our at-large positions. And our at-large positions are, right now we have 10 at-large members, and we have 5 members that are environmental, recreation, agriculture, municipality water, and industrial water. And then we have another position that's evidently an at-large position, which is our Green River representative. So that was never in the original lawmaking. I think the Green River just got left out. Don't know why, but it did.
You told me.
Evidently. So so there were questions about those, at this point, 16 seats. We needed to discuss the water rights requirement. So in the law, it says 5 of the 10 must be water rights holders. And we added 5, so we said 10 of the 15 must be water rights holders. We needed to discuss the residency requirements for those positions, because we have a requirement in our bylaws that say, no, we can't have more than 6 representatives from any one county. So of the 15 or 16 seats, we can't have more than 6 from any one county. And then we had a requirement, or we needed to discuss the attendance policy for the at-large positions, because we have people on this round that are members of this roundtable, have been members for 4+ years, that have attended less than a handful of weeks. So we have an attendance problem that we're gonna have to deal with as well. So at this point in time, we're unable to proceed with the discussions for those 3 questions. Because of the CWCB guidelines that were put out several years ago, that are causing us a bit of a problem. So go ahead, Sally. Next slide.
I thought you also mentioned that we were just inconsistent with the act itself, that we.
So here's the act right here. Yep, so here's the act. So part 4 of the act says 10 at-large members appointed by the roundtable members, and they include the environmental, recreation, ag, municipal water and industrial water, and then 5 at-large positions. That's what's in the law. Go ahead.
Doesn't say 15.
It doesn't say, our bylaws say 15, but this says 10.
The law says 10.
Yeah, so in the CWCB guide, frequently asked questions, and the guide can be found, you go to the CWCB site and you search for basin roundtables. Then you comes up with a basin roundtable page, and on that page is a link to the CWCB guide, which is probably 30 pages, maybe, didn't count them all. But on the top of page 8, it says one of the frequently asked questions is, can roundtables add new seats not specifically described in the Water for 21st Century Act, which is 3775-104? And the answer to that is, there is no provision for adding additional members in this statute. Allowing a roundtable to add members could skew the balance of the voting membership, which was originally contemplated by the legislature. Anyone can attend a roundtable meeting and provide input that informs decision making. If a roundtable has added seats, which we have to the tune right now of 6. If a roundtable has added seats, they should consider consolidating seats back to the original number of seats in legislation at the first opportunity. E.g., at the end of like some of the terms as they come up. And I've got a list of the members that are at-large members and where their terms are. So everybody on the list comes up in the next 3 years, 26, 27, 28. So that's kind of like us walking into a buzzsaw. So we've got six too many people. Go ahead.
He's gonna slap your hand.
Well, the funny thing was, Steve's explaining this to him and they go, what are you talking about? You got too damn many people already.
Yeah. So the act says at-large membership should be those 5: environmental, ag, recreation, domestic, and industrial, and 5 at-large members. That's what's in the law. Our bylaws say we're gonna have an environmental, ag, recreation, domestic water, and industrial water. We're gonna have a Green River Basin representative, which is
T-right seat.
Yeah, T-right seat, which is not in the law, and we have 10 at-large members. So we have a problem. So when I talked to Jeff, his first response was, well, you and I have talked about this, and I said, whoa, I'm not sure I've ever heard this conversation, because this one I would have remembered. So that's our problem. Go ahead, Sally. So the seats that are up there is, currently we've got an environmental appointment, a representative, which is Reese. So I have them in order. So Reese and the ag appointment, or the ag at large, they're both right now, their seats come up in 2028. The next block, recreation with Ken, domestic with Frank, industrial water with Jackie, and then 3 at-large positions, 2, 3, and 4 with Doug, Jeff Comstock, and Doug Davis. Their seats come up in 2027 for re-election.
Is that fall 27?
The fall, yeah, November. So November. So everybody's seat the year of their, so like Jeff and those folks on that list, their at-large membership to the roundtable Does, it ends at the beginning of the November week. And then, we've got in 2026 coming up, we've got Charles Whiteman, Chris Collins, Jennifer Holloway, Travis Day, T. Wright Dickinson, Bill Badaraka, and Vince Wilczek, all in 26. And then, thank goodness, our at-large position number one didn't show up in November, so we didn't fill that seat.
So now we only have 5.
Yeah, so now we're 5 over, not 6. But those are the dates, and you know, to me, and we're gonna have to work this out as a committee, the suggestion that that CWC came up with is, well, when somebody's seat comes up, you just don't reelect them. Well, about half of the people are in 26, half of the people are in 27, and we're gonna have to figure out what's fair about that. Because I don't think that at the end of 26, we just say, okay, we're only gonna fill 1 or 2 positions in 26, and everybody else doesn't have a seat in. So we're gonna have to work our way through that. Go ahead, Sally. So we haven't really talked about how we're gonna, what our approach is gonna be. I sent these slides out and everybody kind of added a little bit, but I think our first step would be an update on what we perceived as what our problem is, and that's what we're doing tonight. Is kind of making the membership aware that we have a problem and that we're 5 at-large members over the original statute. The bylaws committee would then hold several meetings between January 14th, which is today, and March 11th, to see if we can resolve a path forward on how to change the bylaws and establish a path forward to reduce members. I think in trying to reduce the members, we should look at the following, which is revise the attendance policies for at-large and appointed members so that the policy can be utilized in this process of how we're going to get rid of people. Because the people that don't show up for meetings.
Probably not.
They're gonna their voting privilege. Yeah, they're gonna lose their voting privilege. They can still come to meetings, they just won't be members and they can't vote.
They can sleep there.
Yeah. Sorry, it's late. This is my 3rd day of meetings, so. So in trying to reduce the meetings or reduce the membership, we need to revise the attendance policy. I think we need to look at, when we look at the attendance, I think we need to look at how active are the people? Do they come to the Pepo? Do they come to the grants? Do they come to the Big River? How active are they? Because we're not hard to get people here for Basin Roundtable meetings. And some people aren't even on committees and whatever. So I think we need to look at it all, but that's something that we'll have to discuss and try to figure out. Attendance, and then, ask at-large members if they would volunteer to step down from their seat. That's kind of what our current bylaws say, is that myself, Frank, or Chris write a letter to them and say, you know, you're not attending these meetings. Why don't you just step down? That's literally what our policy says right now. And then we need to not fill seats when they come up for renewal, that's the suggestion in the CWCB guidebook. But I think we somehow need to consider the block of people at 26 and the block of people at 27 and how we try to handle it. So I think this process of addressing these issues that are facing the bylaws committee may be a process where we bring forward some of the changes in March so that they may be utilized finalized at the May meeting. So I think we're gonna have to maybe walk our way through this and change some things, and then have the result or change some more things. I don't know how to hit it in one fell swoop. Yeah, Bill?
I was just curious how the water rights issue would affect the at-large seats. In other words, out of that list of at-large seats, how many of those have water rights?
So
we can let the bylaw.
yeah, so I asked, so that was the first thing our bylaws committee asked is, how many people have water rights?
I don't know.
So it's about 7 or 8, so about half of the people on the committee or at-large positions don't have water rights, the other half do. So that will also be, because the law says at least 5 of the 10 must have water rights. So that certainly will play into how we're gonna about positioning these seats.
But it's at least 5 have water rights, it's not 5 don't have water.
No, at least, I think it says at least 5, right?
Yeah, there's copies of the bylaws around the room, so.
Yeah.
And it's not just, I think there's bylaws or your, work for an organization or representative
Yes.
that has water rights.
Now, let me just make it even more confusing. You know, I know that we've had discussions at the IBCC level about the 1177 is 20 years old. You know, what have we learned in 20 years? And is it perfect, or are there a few things that we might want to tweak? Obviously, there's 9 basins coming, the IBCC would play a big role in trying to coordinate, like, what is the consensus about what we want to maybe suggest? Because if we can't come in with a unified proposal to the legislature to do a modification of this, there's absolutely no reason to take it to the Capitol. But if we do have a consensus on there needs to be more members, or whatever it is that we decide that we think is important, then that might be one of these topics that we're taking forward through your IBCC representatives, just FYI.
Can you go to the next slide, Sally? So now that the membership is aware of some of the problems we're facing and trying to reduce membership numbers, what are your thoughts on process, timing, and multi-step bylaw changes? So, I mean, my goal is not to get us to this by a certain date. I think we should have made good strides to getting there by this November. I think our yeah, I think attrition's gonna get there. I think some members are probably gonna say, I haven't had time to be at the meeting, I'll resign my seat. So I think we can get partway there. I don't think we're gonna get all the way there. We may not get all the way there by November, but I think if we're making strides to heading that way, maybe we can do it at the November meeting where we just say there's only these amount of seats and bring the 27 votes into 26 and just do everybody at once. I don't know. We need to talk about that. But so I mean, the way I look at this is we'll probably have some things to talk about in March. We'll probably try to have a plan by May. And then if you think about it, July and September are the last 2 meetings of the year. And then November's the start of another year. So we're not gonna start dropping people right away, but if we address people with attendance problems that don't wanna be here and they wanna resign their seats, I think that drops our membership down a little bit before we need it, but that's kind of where we need to go. Jeff, you want to weigh in on anything? I think that's the end of my slides.
We have a couple comments online also.
Yeah, I don't think I have anything to add. I'm certainly here if there are questions. It's not necessarily an exact science. We don't have a deadline or anything like that you need to do this on. More just a suggestion. So, take that for what you will.
Okay,
Doug Monger's got his hand up, and then Jackie Brown.
yep. Hey, Doug, go ahead.
Yeah, so being here from its inception, I'm just confused a little bit because I thought we had this conversation probably 3 years, 4 years after the inception of the committee, and it was kind of our little thing. Of course, we didn't change the bylaws at that time to modify our opening of more at-large people, and I guess when we had that conversation back at the roundtable meeting, the Yampa White Green roundtable level, we were discussing having more inclusive and getting more people involved and still having consensus and the rest, because we weren't voting on one and 5-on-4 and the rest, and trying to get more people involved. Excuse me. So I'm just confused, and hell, whatever. So we're just trying to do what we need to do. But I've been here probably, I think I've only missed one meeting since the inception of the meetings. So I could surely volunteer to quit though too. So it's all good. Love doing what we're doing.
Yeah, Jackie.
Yeah. Thank you, Steve. Steve has really carried a lot of weight with this, so I really appreciate him doing that. I just wanted to mention that the seats on the at-large docket that are appointed, the environmental, the recreation industry, agriculture, I don't think that it would make any sense to be dropping them off at the year because those are in the statute. So I just wanted to be clear about that. We would have to reappoint those same positions to remain within the statute itself. That was all.
Yeah, I was just thinking, Jackie, if somebody volunteered to resign, then that would be a reduction of one from our membership role, but then we have to elect somebody else to be in that position.
Yeah, so this is a pretty common thing that roundtables have done over the years. And I think there's maybe different interpretations of the statute. It's the 10 at large and then naming 5 of those as, environmental, recreation, industrial, local domestic water provider, and agriculture. I think maybe created some confusion. But, I wasn't here at the inception of that. I was, trying to learn how to drive a car, or something like that. So I think what we were just trying to do is sort of create some guidelines in the book and interpret statutes so that everyone is on an equal playing field. You don't really have to think too hard to understand why there's no provision for adding seats to the round table. This is really designed to be a balanced forum for discussion. That being said, I completely agree with Doug. I think the last thing that we're trying to do is discourage participation in the roundtable. In fact, we are investing a lot of money and a lot of time to encourage participation and, really help and support the basin roundtables. What I think, the statute, from what I can tell from this giant book of transcripts I have from the legislative session, was really they were pretty deliberate in creating the seats. Do I think they got it exactly right? Maybe not. But I think they have pretty wide representation. And so I think, the intent here is not to send folks on their way. And I think, you vote by consensus. So, if someone has or participates in the meetings and, wants to put their thumb up for a vote, I don't envision a situation in which we're going to, count each voting member one by one and really stick to that. I think is sort of just a guideline to sort of try to work back to the original intent of the statute. But, that being said, everyone's sort of taking it on their own time frame. What I have suggested to other roundtables who are struggling with the same thing is those 5 at-large seats that are just sort of at-large seats. I don't think there's anything of you like not allowing you to be prescriptive of what those 5 are. So, they could be as general as like a water rights holder, or some folks, want a watershed health person in one of those seats, or, a water quality person, in different areas. So I think you could sort of do that. If you wanted to, certainly don't have to. You can just, have voting at large members. There are plenty of opportunities to be engaged. I don't have a seat on the round table, and yet I'm at every single meeting. I'm pretty engaged. There are sort of liaisons for like the USGS or CPW and things like that. So I think there are plenty of ways to get engaged. The CWCB board member doesn't have a voting seat on the roundtable and yet very engaged. And so I think there are a lot of ways to do it. But like I said, the last thing I want to do is for someone to have a voting seat and then, lose their quote unquote voting privileges and then just go on their way. Like I want, it would be in my ideal world, every roundtable would have, 100 participants or something like that or more. But so, just take that for what you want. But I think, the intent here is to just stay in line with the statute, create a balanced forum for discussion. And to create a balanced forum for discussion, I think that requires anyone and everyone who's interested in water, who manages water in the basin, to be engaged, whether they, have an official vote or not.
Okay, Julie.
Yeah, hi Steve. I like the start of the process and the timing and the approach that you're laying out, and I will volunteer to be part of the bylaws committee to help with that.
Okay, so noted. I will include you on the next set of, next time we schedule a meeting.
Sounds good. Thanks.
You got 2 in the row. Will was up first.
Will?
Yeah, I think what I'm hearing from Jeff and what I'm also hearing from Doug is we need like some engagement, definitely. So my question is this, is how many, I think the intent of the bylaw or the statute was to make sure that we didn't have any like voting irregularities, it was balanced. So what about if some of these people that are on there, how many of them have voting seats? All of the people that were being asked to come off, or they all have voting seats?
Everybody has a voting seat except for the 3 out of basin reps, which are Jonathan and Amen, and then the other one's not filled. Those are the only 3 people listed on our membership. Mike is there, but he's got a seat as a Jennifer Water Conservancy or whatever.
So maybe I'll put a point on it, is like, what about, we're trying to get rid of the voting seats, but we're not trying to get rid of some of these people. What if we transition over to a non-voting seat, but they still have a kind of a seat on the round
Well,
table, like,
that-
like out of basin?
So that's an option that we'll have, that the bylaws committee will have to walk through that, to say, so what if we end the voting privileges on additional seats? But how do you do that fairly? So,
Yeah,
it's not an, there's no easy swipe of the magic wand, and
that would kind of be what I would think about, you know, is because we need engagement, obviously, and these people that are here, they come, they're all valued. And so I would hope that we can maybe do something of that nature. That's just my 2 cents.
so we have engagement, but the problem is, and I'm not gonna throw any names out. We have an attendance problem, where we have at-large members that don't come to meetings.
Sure.
So why do they even want to be on the basement roundtable? Yeah.
And my thought that you said was, ask those people first, hey, we have an attendance problem with you. Do you want to be on the round table? We're actually looking for people to get off the round table, we're out of our bylaws. Yeah, we're thinking you might be a good one, because you never come. Perfect.
Yeah, no, that was Jackie's suggestion. I mean, that's kind of what our bylaws say now.
Yeah.
Is if we have an attendance problem with someone, then either I or the 2 vice chairs address it, and that's the way to start, but I don't think that's not gonna bias all the way to the 5 or the 5.
We need four to go bye-bye.
We need 5.
Thought there was one on.
So we're 6. So we're 6 over, but one of them we didn't fill, so.
5, okay.
Yeah. And making them non-voting members might be the answer. I don't know. We'll have to kick that around.
Just don't fill the one that's vacant. So that's one. You don't have any applicants, right? So just don't fill that one. Just, cross that one off. That's one. And I'll chalk that up to you guys are working on it. That's great.
Yeah, I know. I had that conversation with that gentleman that had put an application in November, and I had that conversation, and he wasn't very happy with me. Jeff, did you have something, or?
Well, I just wanted to kind of almost echo what Doug Monger said. I was here since the beginning too. I'm one of those that have never missed a term on this. And I remember very clearly when we were sitting at Shadow Mountain and added those seats, Shadow Mountain Clubhouse at the time, and added those seats and added Green River seat. And what Jeff Rodriguez said really hits home with me about some lawyers have interpreted this differently. I can guarantee you our legal advice at that time came from Tom Sharp. And Tom Sharp and us talked, we sat down as a roundtable and talked about this. And Tom's legal interpretation of this was we can add those seats. So I guarantee this isn't an accident. And I think we thought it through, we talked about it. I stand with Munger on this. This was not a haphazard, accident.
We're not the only ones that added seats. We're not the only roundtable that added seats.
Well, I just wonder if there's a different lawyer that would think we're all right.
I don't know.
So Jeff, Tom still represents my district. I'll ask him for.
To be clear, I am not a lawyer. And I did not stay at the Holiday Inn Express last night, so I have I'm not a lawyer at all.
Yeah, thanks. Well, I agree with Jeff and what Doug said, because that's what I remember from being with the roundtable since 2008, although not a member then. But in the past, I have had to, when I was the chair, I did have to send out some letters to some folks that weren't attending. And some of those folks yielded and they moved on. And I know that's a situation that's happening right now. And Steve, I'm sympathetic to what you're going through, because this is not an easy task. But Colorado seems to have a good way of varying from statute pretty regularly. And here we got a small grassroots group that is doing something rather rather down at home. And what are we really doing that's really influencing the state decision makers other than being a group of water people concerned about a natural resource? And we have 10 extra people that come around the table, and now we've got a couple of attorneys saying that's problematic. I think the state maybe needs to take a turn around and look at themselves in the mirror, because what we're doing is pretty simple and in the overall scheme of things rather harmless. But really what we're doing is protecting our own base and getting a greater input from people that care about something here. So the numbers that are part of it doesn't mean a darn thing to me. People wanting to be there and participate, that's what means something to us. So thank you.
Okay, thanks, Alvin.
I think that's I think that's exactly right. You know, I think encouraging participation is one thing. I think you can certainly participate in the roundtables without that. Like I said, I don't have to think too hard about how someone could co-opt this and create, you know, a bunch of at-large seats that sway the decision making in one way or another, particularly as we hand out CWCB funding. You know, hundreds of millions of dollars go through our agency annually, and you all play a big role in that. And so I think the idea is just to try to maintain the balance, and without statute sort of guiding that, there's really no telling how people might, you know, co-opt the system. But like I said, you know, it's more of just a sort of a suggestion rather than like a hard and fast rule. I don't think there's going to be anyone who's like, you're not in compliance, you have too many people. I don't foresee that happening. So yeah, you guys can proceed how you want. But I think there are lots of ways to be involved in the roundtable without a vote, and even voting when you don't have a vote, you can do.
And the non-voting member. Okay. Ben, did you have? Yeah, just, I wanted to thank you for your slides, because I think it was a good summary of where we're at. Thank the bylaws committee for continuing to work on this, because it's not the most fun to work on bylaws. I do think that we need to try to comply with the statute until it's amended. But I would like to throw my support behind Will's idea. I think we have voting members, and then we could name 50 non-voting members that want to be here, that want to be part of this, feel like they're part of the roundtable, but we're only by statute allowed a certain number of people to vote. But we could, address a lot of people, because a lot of people want to be members. And they were like, we vote. How often do we have a split vote? I mean, they're almost all unanimous votes. And just keep the right number of voting members, but invite people to be members of the roundtable. Thank you. Okay. Well, that's all I had. Our next meeting is March 11th, 2026. Kristen, are we in this room?
Rona? I think we'll be in the library.
Okay, so we're supposed to be in the library today until the time Kristen sent us an email and said, hey, we're not in the library. So.
Need a motion to adjourn?
I do.
I
Do I have a second? Greg Davis. So Andy motion, a second.
Thanks for doing
Yeah.